You are listening to Golden Otter Divinations, where the metaphysical meets the mainstream with Autumn Seibel. Tune in 9 a.m. Pacific the first Friday of every month as Autumn helps you manifest your dreams by connecting to loved ones in spirit, empowering you to find both physical and spiritual healing. Are you ready to transform your life and connect to divine guidance through practical strategies? Golden Otter Divinations is the place to find engaging interviews with medical experts, practicing mediums, intuitives, healers, and many more. Now, here's your host, Autumn Seibel.
Hi, everyone. I'm Autumn, and you're listening to Golden Otter Divinations on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour as we explore where the metaphysical meets the mainstream. Join us live each first Friday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, when we have new and informative and engaging interviews with medical experts, practicing mediums, intuitives, healers, and many more to help uplift, educate, and empower listeners like you to find the physical and spiritual healing available to you that's sent by spirit. Okay, so welcome to the show. Today I have Reverend Brian Funk here to discuss mediumship, spirituality, reincarnation, spiritual awakening, and spiritual evolution. All terms that were once relegated to private gatherings, church basements, and castigated by society as woo-woo or taboo topics at best or dangerous practices at worst. But a new era has dawned, the Age of Aquarius, which we'll talk about. However, and these terms are emerging on the horizon and quickly becoming a part of popular culture. They're no longer relegated as dangerous or mysterious, and metaphysical principles of oneness and a mandate for spiritual evolution as part of the human consciousness and condition have definitely appeared on the fringes of mainstream media. And it's easily seen seeping into public consciousness and discourse. With that said, I am so happy and to have the honor of introducing you all to Reverend Brian Funk, who was ordained in 2009 by the United Metaphysical Churches. He is a UMC certified medium and healer. Reverend Funk's passion for divine metaphysics and highly refined sensitivity to the other side make him a gentle and wise healer and teacher. He's presently the pastor of Arlington Metaphysical Chapel in Arlington, Virginia. If you ever have a chance to go to a service, I highly recommend it. It's a great church, great chapel. And with that said, welcome to the show, Reverend Funk. It's a lot, right?
Thank you very much, Autumn. Thank you. Thank you to Divine Otter Divinations. Thank you for Transformation Talk Radio for giving me this opportunity. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks. So to raise our vibration, to raise our vibration and like get into the flow and just kind of to calm my nerves, I like to start by asking all my guests if they've had a golden moment lately. So golden meaning a time you were just totally in the flow, or an interaction that you knew was sent by spirit, something that made you smile and your heart sing. You had any golden moments lately?
Yeah, actually, I have. The beauty of working at Arlington Metaphysical Chapel is I get a lot of those moments.
Yeah, I bet.
I get to meet some absolutely fantastic people. Yep, and meeting the type of people that it feels like you've known them your entire life. Mm-hmm. And it's like meeting an old friend or a brother or sister. And regardless of their race, gender, age, you're just like, oh my God, I love you. Great to see you again.
Yeah.
That's happened twice in the last couple of weeks. And it just reminds me that I'm on the right path. Meeting these people, having them put in my life, that's a golden reminder for me that everything is as it should be.
They always say people come into your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I'm tracking that always. I'm like, are you here for a season or what's the reason? Are you my student? Are you my teacher? And, once you kind of get into this metaphysical mindset, nothing seems random. Nothing seems like by chance. In the moment, it may kind of like, I talk about manifesting a lot. And sometimes when I manifest things, it like, even though I'm consciously trying to create it, when it happens, I still am surprised. I'm like, whoa, maybe I'm just that new to it. But, it's nice when you have those moments of pause. You go, oh, cool. Anyway, so thank you for that. So right now we're going to start off by talking about modern day mediumship. We'll kind of clarify the topic for our listeners and then dive in. So could you define for our audience what mediumship is?
Sure. I mean, some of the more traditional definitions of it are basically someone who's sensitive to the vibrations of the unseen. Basically, somebody who's sensitive to the world of spirit, whether that's seeing spirit, hearing spirit, feeling spirit, smelling spirit. These are all what's known as the clairaudience, clairsentience, clairvoyance. Those are the traditional terms for it. It's basically the people that can see through the physical veil onto the other side of life. And that's also kind of what the core of metaphysical is, too, beyond the physical. But mediums are really ones that can kind of perceive beyond that veil into the spiritual side or more energy side, to be able to communicate and bring forth messages or information from the other side. It's different than a psychic that can pick up on the energy around you and maybe the energy of somebody, more than a medium will give you information or be able to perceive them or see them in some way, to give more clarification that the soul continues on. And there's actually different types of mediums. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that was one of the things. When I was first, trying to understand the concept of mediumship and psychic development, because I didn't grow up with any kind of understanding of this. Like, I grew up in a rural community. I've said before, I had no framework for this. So understanding the difference between a psychic and a medium was more, everybody is psychic. It's a matter of picking up on the energy that's present on this plane, the astral or the earth plane. Like, who's going to call me? Who's going to send me an email? Who's coming to my door? It's those pings that you get of just knowing. And a mediumship is where you're actually going up to the astral level and connecting with physical beings, humans, relatives, people who once lived, who are now in spirit. I guess that's the definition as I understand it. And once I knew those two things, because psychic can kind of, it gets a bad rap. And now if you relabel it as psi or telekinesis, things like that are actually sort of starting to come in a little bit more to the mainstream, a little bit, it helps separate those two issues or those two phenomena, if you will. What were you going to say?
You did a great job of almost defining mediumship yourself. Because if you think about those that are on the spiritual side existing on a frequency like of your television set, like let's say channel 200, and our normal everyday life exists on channel 5.
Yeah.
So they have to lower their vibration to a certain channel. We have to raise ours to a certain channel to meet in the middle. And that's where the term happy medium comes from.
Yeah. Happy. And that's one of the things that I love when, especially when I go to get reading, like everybody has a different style of mediumship. But one of the things that I love is, for the most part, I have never seen, maybe of mediums past, we'll talk about that, the history of mediumship, but there's no longer really a doom and gloom approach. Like, somebody comes back, it's like, I'm upset with you that you did this. It's like, no, that's not what mediumship is. If a spirit is taking the time to come back down here, like, why would you bother unless it's to really serve a higher purpose and to bring that person peace? So I think there's a little bit of fear. Maybe if somebody transitioned and there was tension or hostility or some unresolved karma, that they're scared. It's like, oh gosh, are they going to come and they're going to be mad at me? No, once they get to that level, it's not like they lose their personality. They just see things from a higher perspective, and all of the stuff kind of happening on the earth plane loses its importance. Things like money, property, arguments that here on the physical plane seem so important. It's just not from their perspective. As far as I understand it, and in my experience, I've never had or seen a reading where somebody has come through. And I mean, I've probably seen more people get read than I've personally been read. That it's always a message of love, understanding, and peace. That is, if you're looking for a medium, anybody out there, that is what you should be looking for. Somebody who that's all they do. Because I feel like that's a misconception I commonly have to dispel when people know what I do. So anyways, maybe you could give us a brief history of mediumship, at least in the US, how it kind of came to our country. What are the historical roots?
Sure. Most people tend to focus on the spiritualist history of mediumship. And that spiritualism out of, I believe it was 1848 in actually Lilydale, New York, or not around upstate New York. I don't know if it's Lilydale, but it kind of began there. That's what most people think was the beginning of mediumship. But in fact, it goes back a long time. It goes back, you have lots of different cultures, lots of ancestries throughout the world that believed in communicating with the spirit after it died. So it's nothing really new as far as like 160, 70 years ago. It's been around for a long time. Years, shamans, you have all these different people with different terms for doing the same thing, of trying to go into the spirit world and bring forth messages back to the physical world. So I find myself like with more of a anthropological definition now of mediumship, not just limited to spiritualism. But I find that most tend to focus on, and within that traditional spiritualist definition, you would have physical mediums and mental mediums. And the mental mediums were the ones that could see, hear, feel, smell. But the physical mediums were ones that could use their body and use what's called ectoplasm to materialize a spirit or to materialize an object. And the problem with all mediumship is the propensity to then commit fraud. Yeah. And so that's another reason why a lot of this stuff was relegated to not so good, because you had a lot of people using it to manipulate people and make money, which is still a problem, which is why, like you said too, if you're going to a medium and if the messages aren't about love and closure and releasing guilt and love and acceptance, you might want to find another medium and ask for your money back.
Yeah, definitely. I was just up at Lilydale, and to bring up the history, it's such a peaceful place, but that is kind of where the modern day mediumship in America sprouted from. But now the way I see it is that it's kind of all over the country it's all over the world, but in our country, it's these different little pockets of belief that all kind of stem from the same concept that we can connect to the other side. Now I see it going more like mind. Like we all have the power within our mind, and you see mediumship development courses and things like that. It's not just one single person is born with it or not. It's a skill that we all have. We all have these amazing brains that we can develop. And I could go on a long diatribe about that, about, being indigenous people. We've evolved past that point where we don't use all of our senses. Like a lot of times people ask me, well, what exactly is it? And I go, okay, well, you have 5 senses: sight, touch, smell, hearing, and taste. It's a 6th sense that we just have stopped using as much, and some people use it a little bit more. But hey, we have to take a break. But when we come back, we will talk more about mediumship in modern America. So you're listening to Golden Otter Radio with Autumn Seibel. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll explore more about Divine Metaphysics with Reverend Brian Funk. Stay tuned, and we will be right back. My guest today is Reverend Brian Funk, who is talking to us about modern day mediumship and divine metaphysics. If you have a question and you want to call in, it's 1-800-930-2819. Again, 1-800-930-2819. Reverend Funk will be taking your questions towards the end of the show. Before we continue with the interview, I wanted to make sure everyone knows how to get a hold of Reverend Funk. So Reverend Funk, could you give us your contact info for our listeners, please?
Sure. Because I travel around so much, I do prefer email. It's the best, because when I'm actually where I live up in New York most of the time, I don't have a signal. So rev.brianfunk@gmail.com. That's probably the best way to get me, is through email. And then we can always set up phone stuff after that. But that's my preferred method. You can also always reach me through the AMC chapel as well.
Perfect. And then your contact info is also linked through Transformation Talk Radio. Just go to my show page, everybody, a Golden Otter Radio. And that's where you can check out Reverend Funk or any of my guests that I have on. So we're back, and we're talking about modern day mediumship. So we have a little brief history of mediumship, what exactly it is. And now we want to talk about, how do you think American mediumship is evolving, like specifically in our country?
Sure. I mean, from what I've observed here and what I believe, it's directly related to the shift into the Aquarian age. And really the difference between mediumship within the Piscean age and the Aquarian age is that in the Piscean age, mediumship was more about I have this gift and you do not. Therefore, you need me to contact your loved ones. You need me to do this for you. I am your go-between.
Yeah.
And it was much more like it was much more egocentric in my perspective. And the shift now into the Aquarian age is that since our vibration has lifted and gone higher to a higher frequency, a lot of us, as we used that analogy earlier, can connect to those channels a lot easier than we could before because our vibrations raised kind of collectively together. So I see mediumship and even just being able to connect with spirit being so much more universally available because we've shifted and raised our consciousness and our vibration. So it's not just limited to a few that could do that. Now collectively, a lot of us can. So you can even see it on the media. You can see it on TV. I mean, mediumship's everywhere now. I mean, you can follow mediums around and watch them talk to people.
Well, and even at a lower level, it's like it's seeping in and it's pervasive. And maybe it's because that's what fascinates me. That's what I have an eye for. But on social media, on mainstream TV, people will say things casually that'll slip out of their mouth on reality TV. And the producers, whoever's filming or whoever's watching, half the time, I bet people don't even catch it. But you say, oh, well, I'm sending them off in a bubble of white light. And somebody might smirk or go, what are you talking about? Like, and I hear what they're saying. I go, oh, check. Like you are in this belief of manifesting your reality, connecting to the other side. Or crystals are huge in mainstream everywhere. I mean, I think crystals have become, there's not really a taboo around them because they can be valued just for their pure beauty and the aesthetic nature of them. But crystals have energy. I'm sitting here with my, white selenite to connect. And, the more you kind of see these things littered throughout, I shouldn't say littered, sprinkled throughout the mainstream, it kind of makes it easier to have these conversations more openly. And then, the other thing that I'd like to talk to you about this, because you are a minister and, you go around and people say, well, what do you do? Oh, I'm a minister at a chapel. And it's a little bit easier to kind of put a box around that. It's like, oh, well, it's a religious thing. But really, there's mediums everywhere, and maybe they're not religiously affiliated. Being able to talk about it from a place without shame, from a place without embarrassment, and from a place of fearlessness, where you're going, you know what? I'm not here to prove to you anything. I'm here to do me. And if it interests you, come on over, let's talk. But that's the shift that I see happening. Because enough people are going, you know what? I don't have to prove anything. And if you want to find the path, you'll find the path on your own. That's the kind of the shift I'm sensing a little bit.
I could not agree more. That Aquarian shift is about empowerment.
Yeah.
It is about becoming your authentic self. And everything you said I couldn't have said it better. And that's the beauty of this shift in energy too, is that more and more people, they want what's authentic. They want what's more genuine. And they can kind of perceive BS, so to speak, a lot better now. And they want what's real. And I think collectively too, as we move forward with psychic abilities, mediumship, and you're right, with it becoming so mainstream, even in conversations with people that I would never expect to hear any type of new age terminology, even just the other day, I heard somebody say, oh, it's in your aura. And I was like, I would not have expected that from you. Nice. Hold on. Nailed it.
Yeah. 10 years ago, I remember hearing about auras and somebody was trying to explain it to me and how to see them. And I'm like, what is an aura? And now everywhere I look, even in my children's books, which I'm like, yes, they're like talking about auras and this and that. And it sounds like, woo woo because it's a children's book, but those seeds get implanted. And then when I walk around with my girls, I'm like, well, what's her aura? What's that aura? And they're thinking, oh, from the little pony book we were reading, each has an aura. I go, well, ponies can have auras, humans have auras, and you don't want to condition them, but I'm going to have a show another time about psychic kids and mediumship, like spiritually inclined children who are teaching us more about the other side than we could possibly ever teach them. But it's in the popular culture now. And I'm so excited to have this opportunity to have these open conversations without, fear of retrieval, because in the past that was very much a possibility. That's why I think a lot of mediumship and spiritual belief and understanding went underground, because it was an easy target. And, if you start questioning somebody's sanity, that's the easiest way to minimize somebody and discredit them. You're like, oh, they're woo-woo, they're out there, discredited, done. And as you said, shifting into this age of Aquarian, the Aquarian age, where we are all kind of understanding our own authentic power, and that we don't need somebody to do something for us, that we have the ability within ourselves. Otherwise, why would we be on this crazy place called Earth? That shift, I think, is what's helping. Because there's more, I hope, and I see more of a reciprocity of, if I do this to them, then they could do it to me. And that's less of a fear-based exchange and more of a love-based exchange. Like, I don't want to hurt that person because I don't want them to hurt me. If I don't hurt them, they won't hurt me. Or if they do hurt me, I can move away from it. I don't know. It's my 2 cents.
You're right. The Aquarian energy is all about universal brotherhood and sisterhood. And it's all about treating each other like brothers and sisters and loving. And it's much more about oneness. It's not about separation. It's about coming together. So yes, and realizing that what I do to my brother or sister affects me, and what they, realizing that, I'm going to try to treat everybody lovingly with more compassion and forgiveness. It's kind of living that now, lifting that energy. And I know a lot of people just want to focus on the negativity in the news, but our vibrations growing and shifting, most people just can't perceive it.
Yeah, that's what's so great about this network, is I've never felt like there was anything that was off limits or that I couldn't talk about, because the whole point of the network is to raise our collective vibration. And it just feels nice to know that, like, there are people who want to hear this. And just like I listen to the network too, and I want to hear what is being said, so we collectively kind of counteract what's maybe in the mainstream and make this the new mainstream. But hey, I wanted to talk about metaphysics as far as, is it a philosophy or a religion? And how exactly did you discover metaphysics?
Well, within the organization that I was ordained under, they classify it as both a philosophy and a religion. And philosophy, myself, like, I'm just very philosophical by nature. I'm always questioning things. I question everything. So pondering life's mysteries, pondering what happens when we die. These are all the things that kind of led me into metaphysics. I actually found spiritualism through a friend that was like, hey, they can talk to dead people. And I was like, what? So that's how they kind of piqued my interest. And I went and saw it. And they had me hooked from day one. They brought in my grandmother with a message. It was so ridiculously uncanny. And so specific that I was like, okay, then I became, how's this done? All right, then I had to analytical mind, like, what's this all? Yep. And so it's like, from there, I just kind of, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just to say, it was like the first time I went up to Lilydale. I'd grown up hearing about it. And then the first time I finally went about 10 years ago, walking onto the grounds, I was like, all right, what's this place about? Like, is somebody going to try to steal my soul? Or, I was a little bit fearful about what I had heard. And then I got there, I was like, you're just like a bunch of really, for the most part, sweet older women and men. But I'd only met the women. I was like, you guys are just really sweet. I want to, grandparents. Like, I want to hang out with you guys and have you tell me about the world. But I realized, I was like, wow, there are people on this earth who speak a language that I both intuitively know, but want to learn to speak in public and with others. Oh, totally. You know what?
And I can pass on a quick secret about. Go ahead.
I was just saying, we've got 1 minute. Let's hear it.
Quick secret about Lilydale. I saw they have that fairy village, that fairy houses you can walk through, like the path. That's where I actually saw a fairy, and I cheated. I'm not going to lie. I totally cheated. I followed this cat around. It was going through the woods, and I'm following what it's paying attention to. And I followed it to this little fairy house, and I saw this little light, and it was so cool. And the cat looked at me, and I looked at the cat, and I was like, that's what's up. Thanks, buddy.
Dude. Thanks. I've got to go back.
So if you want to keep the fairies, follow the cats.
Oh, very cool.
Find the cats and you'll find the fairies.
That's a good tip. I was just there last week, but all right, next time I go, I'm going to find a cat and follow it around. All right, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll have more with Reverend Brian Funk. Thanks for listening. And we're back on Golden Otter Radio with me, Autumn Seibel, and my amazing guest today, Reverend Brian Funk, who is an ordained minister, certified medium, and healer. And right now we're going to be talking about reincarnation. So, Reverend Funk, what is reincarnation?
So reincarnation is the belief that the soul can come into a different body, or even to not even just the human form, but different forms. I mean, we can go off and talk about incarnating on different planets and in different types of things in different universes, but to try to keep us somewhat on track here is that reincarnation is that I'm not just Brian Funk, that when I pass on, I can come back and be somebody else in a different body. And I find that throughout what I've researched, even in my own past life discoveries, is that we really try to incarnate in different roles, different races, different cultures, different experiences, because as you progress further along your spiritual unfoldment, you want to be able to have balance, and you want to be able to have understanding and appreciation for different experiences. What I do find that happens so much is that kind of that feeling that I talked about, that golden moment that we started out with almost like a recognition. And a lot of people say, well, did you meet your soulmate? Is this it? And I do feel that a lot of times there is that unconscious recognition that you know this person somewhere else. But also times it could just be that, you two are so linked in that it's almost like another version of you. And there's often recognition in somebody else that you knew you love this person. It could be anything. It could be looking into their eyes. It could be looking into their soul. And you're like, oh my God, I knew you before. When I first started at UMC, I met this, I think she was in her 70s, and we walked around holding hands, and I called her my little girlfriend because I was in like my early 20s, and everybody was like, oh, you guys are so cute, because we just recognized each other. And it was like, it was heartbreaking when I had to leave that weekend, because it was like finding a lost love. And I find that the more you kind of open up, I know.
I recognize that. I see the beauty in it. I know from the outside, people hopefully they won't, because I'm not going to push that energy in here. But it can be easy to make fun of that stuff. But if you just look at the love that exists, and that's the path that you follow, like if you literally with your heart, you just go and you accept that as something that happened and honor it. That's my thing. Like I'm sitting here saying, oh, that's so sweet, because I've had those experiences. When I met my husband, we joked that it was kind of an arranged marriage in the sense that my brothers had gone to school with him and set us up. And I was like, no, I don't want to meet any of your friends. No, thank you. I've got 4 brothers. I was not interested in any of their friends. And because they were all like brothers to me, all the friends. And when I met my husband, Dan, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm supposed to be with you. And I just felt, even after I met him and we lived on opposite coasts, I was like, if I never see that guy again, I felt something in my heart that now will be what I forever am longing for, because it was just an instant comfort, an instant knowing. And then as we got to actually know each other on this life, in this physical world, as he was and I was, and where we were on our life's journey, I said to him one time, I go, I really like being with you. And he goes, why? And I go, I can just be myself. I don't have to be any version other than who I am at my core. And that is as true as the day that I met him as it is now, all these years later. And I think that's like a knowing when you meet somebody who you can just breathe in their presence. You can be happy, sad, angry, and you always come back to this centered place where you're like, this feels safe and this feels right. I mean, that's my definition of a soulmate. But I have had experience with people in past lives who I'll meet and I'm like, whoa, like, like at first on the intellectual plane, you're like, it does not make sense why I am so angry with you for something so minuscule that I would never like be angry at somebody else for. Why is this one thing so like prominent in our interaction? And the more I kind of looked into the idea of past lives, I'm like, yeah, there's probably some sort of karma. You probably hurt me. I probably hurt you. We're probably still trying to work this out. Not ready to deal with it now. See you in another life. Yeah. But yes, so speaking of that, this like concept of past lives, what do you have to say on the matter?
So I find the biggest problem with past life discussion is the ego. Because most people don't want to talk about the time where they, were a jerk or a tyrant or did not less than spiritual things. So I find most people are like, I've met so many people that are like, oh, I was Cleopatra in my past lives. Like, or I've had so many people, I'm not saying that they aren't, but it's like, you also had not so glamorous past lives that have now shaped where you are today. Yeah. So
I'm fully aware that I was a peasant girl. Like, what do they call those? Oh, it's probably not supposed to say it on air, which is why I can't think of it. What do you call it when you a wet nurse? I was like a peasant wet nurse in a past life. I'm like, that was probably something that I did, and I'm very okay with it. Anyways, see, now I'm being silly about it, and people are gonna think, oh, well, you got to take this concept seriously. But you're right, it's this ego attachment that sometimes people can latch on to what happened in a past life. And what about like the victim mentality? Do you ever see that of like, this happened to me in a past life, and let me tell you about it?
Oh yeah, well that whole victim consciousness or that victim personality is a major hurdle to spiritual awareness and spiritual enlightenment. If people keep playing the victim card, they're not putting in the work they need to do to evolve and move on. And I've found that too, that some people be like, oh, this is only happening to me because of something I did in a past life. And it's like, well, no, you always have the opportunity to forgive, let go, anybody that's hurt you in this life, past lives, or anything, and kind of cut that cord and move on with your life and stop being a victim. But with, I'll find too that like past lives can really help you understand why you're here now, because there'll be certain past lives that gave you certain pieces, certain talents in this life that you were meant to have for whatever role and mission you have in this incarnation.
Absolutely.
So, and what's really neat about that too is that if you can go about it and be kind of humbled by those experiences, it's kind of like you packed a backpack with all these tools that you would need from all these different lives, and it's not your entire repertoire of tools, but it's what you needed for this life. And all of us really. There's a great movie too, quick sidebar. It came out in the 80s. It's called Defending Your Life. If you've never seen it, it's hilarious. But they go to like a past lives pavilion where you can put your hand on this machine and use some of your past lives. Check it out. And for the listeners too, check it out. And it's that concept too. It shows that you don't always have a glorious past life. Some of them are just a regular life. You're just a regular person. You didn't do anything extraordinary or anything terrible. And I think that's important too, to know that we're all in these different places as we incarnate. Not all of us are meant to do these extraordinary life-changing things. It's actually the little things that we do that help shape and shift others and each other. So it's much more humbling when you really study everything, that you're like, oh, I do make an impact even little by little. And that's why even if you study the in-between lives, in between incarnations, and kind of setting up, okay, if I incarnate next, what am I trying to do? What's needed down there? What could I do here? You almost set up this like agenda, so to speak, of what you want to try and learn and do. And then you pick your soulmates, you pick your soul family, and it's like, all right, you are my brother in this life. In this life, you're going to be my sister or my mother. And you find that common thread a lot of times helps to be here on earth in a place where most often we feel alien to this world, or we feel uncomfortable here in these physical bodies, because we're used to being in spirit.
I guess that, yeah. So to speak to that, I guess it's a part of the past lives discussion that I find fascinating because, you know, I've had a few and they go, well, you were a geisha in a past life. And I'm like, geisha, wow. And then you go, okay, well, what is that really trying to say about, you know, my life and how I live this life and what's the past experience? And as soon as you kind of integrate that into yourself, you feel, well, I felt a little bit more whole. But the part of the past lives discussion that I like, that I find really empowering, is when you frame it like this: what if I chose to come here now exactly as I am? What if I chose my parents? What if I chose my siblings? What if I chose my coworkers? What if I chose? What if before I came here, I was in this infinite field of intelligence that knew way more than my human mind could ever understand? And I knew that. So while I was in spirit, in concert with, you know, the divine, I made all these choices for my soul's growth. And I said, okay, I'm ready. Send me in, coach. I'm ready to play. And, you know, you come back and you live this life and you go, okay, based on all the past lives that I may have lived, what do I want my future self to be? And that's the part of the conversation that I really find fascinating with past lives. And then this idea of like future lives, because we might not have time to talk about it before we go to a break. But when we come back, I do want to talk about, what if you don't want to do it again? What if you don't want to reincarnate? Are we required to in order to spiritually evolve, or can we just be done? So I'm Autumn. You're listening to Golden Otter Radio. When we come back, Reverend Funk will explain those concepts to our listeners. We're back on Golden Otter Radio with Autumn Seibel. I have Reverend Brian Funk here discussing the bridge between the metaphysical and the mainstream. Now he's going to give us some tips for understanding spiritual awakenings and the Aquarian age understanding of spiritual evolution. But first, we're going to go back just a second to this conversation we were having about reincarnating and this idea that do we have to do it again? Are we required to reincarnate to evolve spiritually, or can we just be done? Is that considered nirvana or enlightenment? What do you think, Reverend Funk?
So, and again, it's kind of just what I've studied, what I've learned, what I've uncovered is that the door to come back, the opportunity to come back is always open, but it's not forced. You don't necessarily get reprimanded to repeat the second grade, so to speak. But that's really kind of a good analogy too, is that each incarnation is kind of like graduating from a different grade and going to a different level of learning and understanding. So it's not a requirement. It's an eventuality because there's no time there. I mean, on the other side, they don't experience this time. So, 500 years goes by in like 2 minutes, just by comparison. It's just, what we think because so many people say, oh, once I'm done with this life, that's it. I'm not coming back. Yeah. But then if you look at things, you kind of realize, oh, maybe I spoke a little prematurely. I would kind of like to experience this or experience that, because there's certain things that to incarnate physically, whether it be in a human form or a different form or in a different dimension or awareness, there's certain things that physical incarnations allow you to experience that you can't get without being incarnated. So at some point, people if they really want to go further, they can, and that's always open. It's especially always open for those that quote unquote do bad things or harm people, the idea of being damned forever and things like that. I don't believe that. And that's not in my philosophy. I believe that you can always kind of remedy yourself and work out those problems that you created, and then incarnate within soul groups and soul families of maybe the person that you did victimize. Yeah. And now you're in their life to try and make up for what you did to them in another life. And that's kind of the beauty of it too. People only see the hurt and the hatred in some of these acts of violence or things like that. But when you actually connect with spirit, you see that, oh my gosh, they possibly knew each other in a past life. I don't want to say everything is absolute, so I'm just going to say they possibly knew each other. But a lot of times that's what I uncover. They knew each other in a past life. Yeah. This was something they agreed upon to not only work out their own karma, but to now provide lessons and opportunities for those around them to experience that, including other family members, other loved ones who now have this happen. And what did they do with it? Do they go with hatred and anger back at this person? Or do they go with learning how to forgive and love and be more compassionate to even those that hurt others?
Yeah.
So we kind of have that as, not only do we choose, go ahead.
No, finish what you were going to say, and then I'll jump in, please.
Sure. I was just going to say, so not only do we, I mean, I hate to say it because some people would say, well, why would somebody come in and choose to experience such a harmful, hurtful thing?
Mm-hmm.
Why would I choose that? It doesn't make sense. But if you take back and look at it from a spiritual perspective, as far as growth, opportunity, all of these things to provide lessons and forgiveness and to further you along to that next grade, like I use that analogy, that's part of the test, is to have these things happen. So that's why you would do that. And because especially when people say, oh, well, they were murdered, or, oh, they were this or that, that's only in the physical. Okay? Like the soul continues. And I think that concept alone, that we can't really die. So as much as you want to do to me in this physical body, it's kind of laughable because I'm going to continue on. So there's no fear.
But your soul will still carry those.
Message.
We got a lag.
Right.
Your soul will still carry those dings, but then it's up to, integration. Up to you to integrate.
That's right. And there's always that opportunity for the soul to continue learning, to continue evolving. And it really is much more of a beautiful perspective on life when you actually see that we're all connected, that we're actually more of a family, even when we hurt each other and do things, that it's just perceived that way.
I was in a circle actually at AMC, and it was like a group reading, and it was a wild one. We'd seen some ectoplasm, which I'd never seen before. I was ready to run for the hills. I'd already marked all of my exits for escaping the situation. It's like my analytical mind could not process what was happening. Spiritually, I was like, it's cool. It's fine. Like, just stay in your seat. But my monkey brain, my analytical brain was going, oh my gosh, get out of here. Everything was fine. But it was very cool because I started looking around at the other people in the group, and they were seeing the same thing that I was, just by what the conversation was at the time. And so you're going, okay, this is not just a figment of my imagination. If I wanted to get analytical, it's like either we're all having a group hallucination or this is what it is. And that's why I like the scientific approach to things. It's like, well, are we all having a hallucination, or can we scientifically look at the situation? Like if somebody was recording it and say there was no influence, nobody, you know what I mean? But what I wanted to say was actually in that circle, the medium brought through some, I don't want to say lower entities, but they were spirits who had, not been so great here on this physical earth. Maybe they had harmed people, they'd harmed themselves. And they had gone to kind of like a holding place where there were higher guides and angels and teachers who were kind of mentoring them. I like to think of it kind of as like study hall, not quite prison, but like study hall, where you don't get to go back to the classroom with the rest of the kids who aren't hurting each other and, are more or less doing what they're supposed to, paying attention, doing their work. You guys got to sit in here and study. I don't know. We had a study hall teacher named Mr. McCain, who sometimes I think kids acted up just so they could go there and learn those lessons with his tough love approach. But that's kind of how I think of it, and how it was introduced to me, this idea that there is kind of a holding place on the other side for people to kind of, or spirits to review maybe what they did in their life that wasn't love-based, essentially. And could say it was fear-based, because if there's really only two emotions, love and fear, it's like if you're committing violence or harming somebody, is that a love-based emotion? No, it's probably a fear-based emotion, a fear of losing them, a fear of, something that happened to them. So you have anything to say about that? A little diatribe?
Actually, no, I love using movies, like we were talking about how all us is mainstream. That same movie, Defending Your Life, they do it after the person dies. They do a life review where they go back through and they take parts of their life. It's all about overcoming fear and choosing love. And it's, so even with what you're saying, like that's at the heart of this whole thing, this whole existence. Overcome fear, choose love. It's that simple.
Very cool. I'm gonna have to check that out. It's just done
beautifully in that movie, very comically.
Defending Your Life. I'm gonna have to look it out. All right, I'll have to find it on VHS, or I'm sure it's probably on Netflix or Hulu or something. All right, so let's get into spiritual awakenings and spiritual evolution. So we talked briefly about the Aquarian age. Could you speak to the spiritual understanding of the dawning of the Age of Aquarius? You know, the song. I always heard that growing up. It was like a 70s song, but for some reason, I always loved that song. I think a lot of people know it. Even if you didn't grow up in the 70s, you've heard it. What exactly are they talking about? What is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius?
Well, just like the song suggests, harmony and understanding.
Yeah.
So right there, it's about living more harmoniously with your brother and sister, understanding each other more authentically, being more of a family, non-judgmental. You can actually see even just the shift in the last 20 years as the Aquarian age came over. We've become so much more accepting of so many different things, and so much more accepting of people being who they are. And that's part of that. This dawning of Aquarius is this shift towards recognizing everybody for who they truly are and appreciating that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Reverend Funk, for that quick tip. It's time to go. It went so fast. So I want to thank you all so much for listening. Be sure to follow Golden Otter Divinations on Instagram, where you can check in and let me know about your golden moments so Spirit and I can cheer you on. Also, if you'd like to contact me or join my monthly manifesting membership, Lunar Manifestations, visit my website, goldenotter.us. I want to thank my amazing guest today, Reverend Brian Funk, for sharing such a wealth of information. And I want to thank you all for tuning into Golden Otter Radio. I had an amazing time sharing this sacred co-creation space with you. Please join me every first Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. Our next show will be Friday, September 6th, 2018, discussing heart-based student education as the kiddos head back to school for the year. Have a great week, and I'll feel your positive vibes back here next time. Thanks so much, Reverend Funk.